got into the business back in 1976 was because I had a strong interest in nutrition and what it could do. The foundation of all the companies that I've been involved with has been the first step. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If we don't prevent disease, we have a very complicated process to reverse it.
That's true.
So it's first and foremost, let's prevent the disease. Let's maintain good health. And back in the mid-1970s, even before I got started in the business, the U.S. government was concerned about the declining health of the American population. Cancer was rising, heart disease, diabetes, osteoporosis, and on and on and on. And this was a huge concern to the federal budget because cost of health care, and we see that even more so now. There's a huge political thing down in the States about whether we can afford health care or not. But in those days, they were saying, well, let's see if we can reduce the number of people that are sick or that are going to get sick. What does it take? What does it take? What can the diet provide, or what is the diet not providing that causes these increases in the health of the nation? And when I talk about the American study, it's exactly the same for Canada or any other country. People are people, they eat the same basic nutrients, the same things to prevent disease. And so this applies to everybody, even though the study was sponsored by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So a study was undertaken back in the mid-1970s, and it was to define what about the American diet, because they realized that the diet had a lot to do with the health of people. What is it in the American diet that is preventing the people from having overall good health? And the study was published in late 1970s, I think it was. And as a matter of fact, you can see the entire study on the Vitex website. I posted it up. But most importantly, they showed that the American diet was not adequate to maintain the good health of the population. But they didn't know what is an adequate diet. What do we need? We know that the diet is deficient in many things. But what should it be? And we had the RDA, Recommended Dietary Allowance. And this was designed not for the health of the general population, but it was funded by the U.S. military. They wanted to find out what do the K rations need to maintain the health of the soldier on the battlefield for 30 days, which was the average life expectancy of a combat soldier, 30 days. So they didn't want them getting scurvy or other diseases in the battlefield. So that's what the RDA were. Minimum amounts to prevent deficiency disease, not to maintain good health over a lifetime. So they wanted to find out what is the optimal level. What is the amount that's needed to maintain people's lives, 50, 60 years of life or whatever. And so a study was funded by the U.S. government after this first study came out to find out the optimal levels. We call them SONAs, Suggested Optimal Nutrient Allowance. What is the SONA required for the health of people to prevent these major diseases? So they awarded the University of Alabama in the U.S. under Dr. I think it was Dr. Charaskin to conduct a study. It was a 15-year-long study, involved over 13,000 men and women in different regions of the United States. And they came up with these levels of nutrients called the SONAs, optimal levels of nutrients that if people get on a regular basis, they won't develop these diseases. Not 100%, because nothing is 100%, but reduce the diseases by 90, 95, 85, whatever percent. It's a big, big advantage. So that's what the study was about. When the study was completed, it was sent to the U.S. Senate to put into law. You can't get anything put into law in the Senate, it seems. It never passed. And the U.S. Department of Agriculture study was banned by the FDA, suppressed, because they didn't want the people to know that their diet was not providing the nutrients that they needed to maintain their health. They didn't want us to know, because the medical profession doesn't want you to know. The processed food industry, fast food industry, they don't want you to know that what they're giving you is deficient, not enough to keep you healthy. So anyway, I had a chance to meet Dr. Taraskin after this study was finished back in mid-1980s, and I said, Dr. Taraskin, this is incredible. I said, can we use this information? You know, because I had a company called Quest Vitamins in those days, and we wanted, you know, I said, this is what we've been looking for, hard scientific proof that if we take these levels of nutrients, we will do a lot to prevent disease. Serious, what we call degenerative diseases. These are things like lifestyle diseases, cancer, for instance, heart disease, diabetes. These are caused by what we do to ourselves. They're not, you know, fate given us something. They're caused by what we do to ourselves. And here's the basic information needed to prevent these things from happening. So we brought out the very first product back in those days, in the 1980s, based on this research, and it was called Inner Source. And it was a very successful product because now we had hard evidence to say that if you follow this on a regular basis, you'll reduce the chance of getting these major diseases. A lot of people don't believe that. They wait till they get the disease, and then now what? Oh, I got cancer, I got heart disease, I got high blood pressure, I got high cholesterol. What do I do? Well, it's what you should have done. That's most important. We can still, it's never too late to begin the reversal process. But we have to, you know, every day we waste is a day that we can't recover. Take smoking as an example. I don't know if this is hard science, but they say for every year a person smokes, it takes 1 year of not smoking to undo the damage. So if you've been a smoker for 20 years, you're not going to reverse it by quitting smoking. You've got to quit smoking for 20 more years before you've undone the damage. And most people don't have 20 years left. By the time they decide that they better stop because they got cirrhosis or they got, you know, emphysema or whatever problems they have, it's virtually too late. I was very lucky because I was interested in athletics when I was young. I never started to smoke. I never smoked in my life, so that's a lucky break for me because all my friends did. You know, those days smoking was, you know, everybody did.
Everybody did it.
But and I'm sure most of you here, your parents or yourselves smoked or had that opportunity to smoke at one time. Those days, it wasn't known that smoking was bad for us. In fact, it was quite fashionable to smoke. I was very fortunate that I didn't get pulled up into that, although most of my friends at that time did, and every one of them are gone. You know, they hurt their body. Anyway, the topic of the subject today is how do we know what a good formula is? You know, when you want to take a vitamin supplement, we recommend, obviously, that everybody take a nutritional supplement, simply because in a perfect world, if you got organic vegetables growing out of your garden and you live a lovely lifestyle, you don't need all these supplements. We've survived on this planet for millions and millions of years without having dietary supplements. But our food wasn't polluted. When we ate vegetables or roots or fruit, it was natural. We got our nutrition. But today, in the last 50 or more years, processed foods, the monocropping of foods, the heating, cooking, storing, you name it, have depleted the nutritional content of foods. To give you an example, again, this is the U.S. figures, but the U.S. Department of Agriculture did a study on wheat. And they looked at the wheat from Kansas in the 1920s. Kansas is called the breadbasket of America. That's where the good wheat comes from. They found that, and they give the charts, they showed that the wheat contained all the essential nutrients. It had almost very close to 30% protein. But all the essential trace minerals that are naturally found in good, rich soil. And they did the studies I think it was every 5 years. And they saw the steady decline in the nutrient quality of the Kansas wheat. So the last time I looked at the study was about 1990 something. The protein level had dropped from almost 30 down to 12%. 5 of the essential minerals no longer detectable, gone, and everything else was lower. So even if we go back to get the whole wheat, natural whole wheat bread made from grain grown now, it's not nutritious like it once was. And if we take white bread, which is further refined, well, that's game over type thing. So the point is that the food today, no matter what you do, you can't get the food that our parents and grandparents had. It's just not possible in today's society, unless you live in an isolated community in a, tropical paradise. People that live in this latitude, there's what they call the half-life of water-soluble nutrients, and it's 7 days. So when you eat a vegetable that's picked 7 days ago, it only has 50% of the nutrients that were there on the day it was picked. And another 7 days, another 50% reduction of that, which is 75 in total. You got 25% of the nutritional value of the food from the day it was picked. The reason I say this, because they've shown statistically that in our latitude, the food that we eat, the time we put it into our mouth, is 2 weeks from the time it was picked, on the average. The fall time of fresh vegetables is shorter and so on. So we're eating food. Organic doesn't matter. Deterioration occurs at the same rate. So we're only getting 25% of the nutrients compared to someone who picks it out of the garden and eats it that day. We go to the supermarket because we don't have fresh food this time of the year. We can't go in our garden and pick a lettuce. It's not grown yet. So we have to keep this in mind. And that's why taking nutritional supplements are so important to maintain our health. Because our body needs these nutrients. It's evolved for millennia to use these nutrients to keep us healthy, keep us free from disease, keep our immune systems functioning. So we need these nutrients. But we can't get it. Even if we want organic, and organic is great because it doesn't have the chemicals and fertilizers and pesticides, but it doesn't have the nutrition either. Organic actually deteriorates more quickly than non-organic foods, surprisingly. Yes, I eat organic whenever I possibly can, but I know that those nutrients aren't in that food because it was picked in Chile or in someplace in South America 2 weeks ago. It's lost 75% of its water-soluble nutrients. That's vitamin C and the B complex in particular. They're gone. So we have to replace those in our diet. And that's why the SONA study, which this formula is based on, is so important because it shows the level of nutrients that we must have. Whether from fresh picked food or not, it doesn't matter. We must have these nutrients to maintain our health. How do we get them? The only way that I knew in those days, and the only way I know today, is to take a nutritional supplement that provides all those nutrients. Then we can be free, largely at least, of these major diseases. They won't undo, mind you, poor dietary habits. If you're taking a lot of saturated fat in your diet, even nutritional supplements will be made ineffective. In fact, most people don't realize, but what is the two most destructive things to our health that we can do? Anybody got an idea?
Smoke.
Smoking? That's one of them.
Carbohydrates.
But that's number two, actually. Of the two things, smoking is the second most destructive.
Don't tell me it's
Carbohydrates
drinking.
are sweet.
Don't tell me it's drinking.
Well, drinking is also, but less than,
Carbohydrates.
Well, carbohydrates, without them you die, so it can't be carbohydrates.
Stress.
The number one is saturated fat.
Oh,
No, yeah.
Saturated fat causes more death,
yes.
more disease than anything else.
Saturated fat.
Smoking is number two. So if you cut out saturated fat and smoking, then your vitamins are going to work that much better. Now, I know most of you don't smoke anymore, so that's a good step. But saturated fat is the hidden enemy because virtually everything we eat, unless you're vegetarian, I'm a vegetarian by the way, but you're getting a lot of saturated fat in your diet.
What about sugars?
Sorry?
What about sugar?
Well, sugar's up there too. I'm just talking about the top two. There's about 10 or 12. Sugar, yes, refined sugar is deadly to the immune system, so on. You want to avoid any kind of refined foods if you can, or keep them to a bare minimum.
Yeah.
Because sugar, very
Honey
harmful.
is better, isn't it?
Well, if you're diabetic, it's not better.
And if you're not.
But honey, yes, is less problem. But you've got to keep it in balance.
Oh, yeah.
You can't have too much refined, the body needs glucose, the brain needs glucose. Without glucose, you don't think. Of course, honey's made mostly of glucose, so it's good source for the brain energy.
Well, I'm doing something right.
Well, we're all here because you're interested. You know,
Yeah.
you're doing things that are right, but we want to make them all right.
Yeah.
If we can. We want to, improve all the time. No matter how interested in health you are, there's always something we can do to improve it. Looking at myself too, I don't always eat perfect, but I eat mostly perfect. So I can still have a little treat. So, looking at a vitamin mineral supplement that a person wants to take to maintain good health. Another thing to remember is that a deficiency of even one nutrient has its health consequences. And if you have all the rest and you're deficient in one, you're not going to have optimal health. For instance, if you're deficient in selenium, your chance of cancer increases dramatically, even if you've got all the other good things. Selenium deficiency is so common now in the soil. Two minerals are the most deficient in the Western diet. That's Europe and North America. Any idea what those two minerals are? Sound like a teacher. Did you do your homework? Well, the number one mineral deficiency in the world is iron deficiency.
Iron, yes.
Okay. Anybody know number two?
Calcium? No.
Calcium, just the opposite. It's excess.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody have another idea what number two is? Very few people know this.
What does it begin with?
Hmm?
What does it begin with, the first letter?
The letter S.
Selenium. Salt.
No.
Salt. Salt. S-E-L-T.
Salt.
Yeah.
Well, that's not a mineral. That's a compound. That's sodium chloride. An element.
Sodium, no, that's salt.
That's a mineral,
Silica.
but it's
That's
not.
silica.
Sodium is a deadly poison too. It's the second most abundant mineral on the planet.
What?
Silica.
Yeah? And yet it's deficient in our diet. It's silicon.
What?
Silicon.
Silica. Silicon.
Silica.
Well, the
Yeah.
organic form is called silica, but the mineral is silicon.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You never get the mineral, even you never get iron by itself. It's
No.
impossible. Iron has to be combined with something. Silica has to be combined as well, silicon. So silica is the second most deficient dietary deficiency. And how important is silica? Well, its value is incredible. Bones, you cannot build bone without silica. And very, very few bone formulas, calcium supplements, put in silica. And you cannot generate bone without calcium, yes, but without silica. So there's another thing, you have to make sure that you're getting adequate silica. And how much is adequate? Well, I've seen silica formulas with 1 milligram of silica. But the body excretes through perspiration, through urination and so on, 40 milligrams a day. So to take a silica supplement with 1 milligram is